Okay, so it looks like we've got everything from elementary up to high school, whether you're the chair of in one or you have kids in one or the other. That's great. That's great. So what we'll talk about tonight, I think will affect everybody, but I just want to make sure in case there's some little nuances that we can talk about. I was going to have us do the next part in chat, but if you don't mind, I think that we will we can just talk. Does that sound okay with everyone, or would you sooner just write your answers in chat? My first question is, what have you done in the past to engage parent and caregivers in your school? So just you can use the reactions and put your hand up if you want, or just turn on your mic and call it out. What have you done to engage parent caregivers in your school in the past? Or what has your school council done? Anybody? If you feel more comfortable, put it in chat. You can do that.
Hi, good evening.
Survey and social events.
Veronica speaking. We have actually engaged parents through a tea and talk.
That's okay.
After we have
Mics don't work a lot. Surveys. Nura, did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, you did. Hi, I'm Noura Aman. I'm a community support worker, so parent engagement is part of my job. So I'll speak a little bit about.
Have you had any activities that you've done that the school council has done? Anything that would bring out your families?
Yes, we did a lot of tea and coffee chats.
You can write it in chat, or you can just turn on your mic and shout it out.
Yeah, coffee and tea chats, and we have done other.
And if you aren't a council chair or on council, you can say what the council in your school has done in the past.
Can you hear other people? Because Nura was mentioning a few things, but you don't seem to hear her.
I just sent Nancy a chat. Maybe she can't hear us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? My mic was on, but I turned it up and I couldn't. Who knows? So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Janice. So Nura, were you speaking?
Yes, I was speaking. I said it's all right. I'm a community support worker, so I do this on a regular basis with my schools. And what we do is usually invite people for school council meetings, but a lot of people don't show up. So we try to engage them in a different way. We have regular coffee and tea chats, and we also engage families for conversations over a simple workshop. And we invite the speakers from public health or other community agencies to speak on subjects important to them, such as nutrition or health, mental health, anything that is important to families.
Great. Anybody else? Can I ask, when you do surveys, what's the purpose of your survey? What are you hoping to find out? Janice, you have your hand up.
I was just going to say, at our previous school, we switched schools last year, but at our previous school, they would order pizza and have food at the meeting so that it was at an odd time so that parents could come. And we used to bring our kids, they'd grab a slice of pizza and go down to the classroom where there was a caregiver to watch over the kids so that childcare and food wasn't an issue to get there. Yeah. It's we haven't been in person and been able to do that at the new school, so I can't suggest it, but I did think that if there's a budget to have just some pizza or something to help with that weird time and getting people some food.
And it's been really difficult this past year and a half, hasn't it, to engage your families and find new ways. I mean, I still think okay, when they come in school, what do you do? And it's even after a year and a half, it's hard to shift gears. And how can you engage your families, and how can you do things with them and help them? My second question is, what have you done in the past, and this can be pre-COVID or during COVID, to engage the racialized parent and caregivers in your communities? You can just talk, just turn on your mic and talk. Nura?
Before COVID, it was different. We invited families and we offered them tea and coffee or snacks, and we sat down and we chat. Sometimes it's when you offer food or drinks, it seems to be kind of relaxing and people kind of show up. But we missed that during COVID. We couldn't do that. So even though we call it coffee or tea chats, it's not the same. It's not the same. So it's difficult to engage families. So we started affinity groups, which is per language. For me, the language that I speak, I would offer it to families. I speak a number of languages, so I would say families, Arabic speaking families, you can join me for a conversation in your first language. So that seems to be attracting a lot of people. My colleagues who speak Somali has started a Somali affinity groups, and it seems to be working very well. A lot of people come to join her through a Zoom meeting, and they would speak in their first language, and she would lead the conversation in the first language, and she would bring guest speakers. And if the person who is speaking to the families speaks English, then she would translate or interpret for them. But she would try to find people who speak the language. So that way it's engaging families.
And you found that worked, that those families were coming out more, were participating more because they could participate in their home
in their
language.
first language, yes.
Yeah. That's great. And I think this is a good time to say that you can find interpretation and translation services through the Parent and Community Engagement Office. You as a council would have to pay for those services, but you've got money on budget line 41,500 that can be used for that. I remember Michelle a number of years ago saying she went to a school council meeting, and all of the parents there spoke Cantonese, and they had an interpreter there for the parents, and the school council was non-Cantonese, they were white. And so the meeting was being offered in English with interpretation in Cantonese. And Michelle suggested that perhaps the meeting should be held in Cantonese with interpretation for English. And that's, first of all, right? But that is a really inclusive, equitable thing to do. The majority of people in that room at that time spoke Cantonese. The people who couldn't understand the majority were the English speakers, and the interpretation should go that way. So that's kind of it's kind of the far end of the interpretation scale, but I mention that because I think that we have to sometimes step out of our natural or practiced ways of doing things and think a little bit differently about how we can be more inclusive and equitable in the work that we do. I see that we have a very divided community, and so we've kind of hit a brick wall right now. We tried a book club, but the way things went last year, people were too tired of Zoom at the end of the day to participate. Well, I certainly understand that Zoom fatigue. On the other hand, what I'm also hearing from a lot of councils is that getting a lot more people out from Zoom, because people can do it in the privacy of their own home. They can keep their videos off. They can be watching their kids at the same time. So I think we need to sort of take advantage of things like that. I want to take this moment, and I'm sorry to be rushing through this stuff, but I've got my eye on the clock. And I will be presenting, Michelle talked about training sessions for councils, and I will be doing one on engaging families. So we'll be doing more there. I want you, there's a couple of things I want to say. I think one of the advantages that has to come out of COVID, because heaven knows there aren't any, but we have always operated in silos. There's been our parents and caregivers. There's maybe the school council in between. There's been the school, there's been the teachers. And COVID has made us come together. Teachers have come into our homes virtually. We as parents, if we've been home, we've seen how the teaching's going on. We've learned a lot of stuff that we never knew before, like how hard teachers have to work, and teachers have learned how hard parents have to work trying to do learning for 3, 4, 5 kids all at one time. So I would urge you, as we now are back in schools, hopefully we'll stay that way, to not let those silos start again, to work really hard to bring everybody together. And we have within our parent caregiver community silos from quite often the dominant culture that's been used to leading things, and then our racialized families who through one way or another have not been made to feel comfortable within the school council setting. I wanted to mention that. Then, and while I do that, I was on sorry, I've got a list of things that I want to try to tell you, and I'm trying to get them out quickly and give you time to talk. I was on a webinar earlier, a couple of months ago from England, and one of the parent engagement people there was talking, and he said, and I thought this was really interesting, that he knew of a school where they would survey their parents, as many of you done, as I have done, as I urge school councils to do. They surveyed their parents about their needs, what they thought, what they wanted. And when they got the surveys back, they looked at them and they threw them out, because they knew that the majority of their families that were on the margins had not replied to them. That the majority of parents and caregivers who reply to our surveys are the ones who see the value in it, who maybe through social capital feel more comfortable in the setting, who understand why they would fill out a survey. And the families on the margins maybe don't get it, or maybe they don't have the time, or maybe they don't have the platform that the survey was sent out to. So your task, I'm not asking you to ignore your surveys, but I'm asking you to think about that. And when you do surveys, which can be really valuable, is do them in numerous ways. And it could be just the old-fashioned way of standing at the curb or in your grocery store or on the street with a clipboard and the questions, and asking the people that go by and asking the families that way. Or some communities really like to talk over WhatsApp. So find out the different ways that your families like to communicate. Maybe send different people out. Every community has leaders, you know, the parent that everybody goes to in that community. Find out who they are and get them to ask the questions. We have two types of work that we do with our families: contact and engagement. And contact is important because it can lead to engagement. It's sending those surveys out, that's contact. It's movie nights. Movie nights are great, but they're contact. Pizza days, pizza nights, that's contact. Fitness nights, that's contact. That's borderline because they're also learning things that they can do at home. What's the difference between contact and real engagement? Real engagement is about building relationships with your families and caregivers, with your staff as well, helping the two of them to get together. It's always linked to learning. And it's about building the capabilities of your families to support learning at home, because the most effective form of engagement occurs in the home. Okay, so I'd like to take a couple of minutes now and turn on your mics. And I'd like to ask you, if we took something like movie night, all right, which I have said to you is contact. If we think that it has to be relational or linked to learning or building family capabilities, how could you change a movie night more into engagement?
I would say have a conversation after the movie. Assign time when the movie ends, then talk about it.
Yep, yep. And what are parents learning if you're talking about the movie afterwards? How is that linked? How is that building their capabilities to support learning? Because it is.
It creates, I believe it creates engagement first. It creates relationships. People feel comfortable to talk about it.
Yeah.
And if the movie, I'm hoping it's educational, then you can talk about it, learn whatever subject was discussed, and take it from there.
Yeah. And it's teaching parents how to ask questions of their kids about what they've just seen, to take a movie or a TV show or a book and not just watch it or read it, but to talk about it. What did you like about it? What characters did you like? Why did you like that character? Why didn't you like this character? What do you think might happen next? Those are all really important questions that are part of learning, that the kids have to have those skills throughout school in everything that they're doing. What else might you do with a movie night?
So we didn't really have a movie night at our school, but we did have a pajama night.
Okay.
And we did reading with our kids, and it was very similar to what one of our parents here said. We had a question and answer session after, and everybody participated, right? So parents were asking questions, the kids were answering, and then anyone could answer and anyone could question. So it was engaging parents within the community. They got to know each other, which was really great. And as neighbors, you know, we met at our school. We had never seen some of our neighbors, and it was just very, it was a very pleasant gathering, sort of. So that really worked for us.
That sounds lovely. And, you know, look, I'm not tech savvy, and I'm pretty sure all of you are 100 times more tech savvy than I am. But there are ways that you can do this online as well. And you can do it with, somebody said they had a book club, but it wasn't that successful. I want to tell you, if you have a good idea and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea. It just means it needs to be massaged some way. You need to try again. So if you think it was a good idea, always try again. But you can do book clubs online. You can do fitness nights online. And then afterwards, talk about it. Let them have questions about what could they do the next time, or what sort of things do they need to know so that they could do it on their own. Okay. We only have a couple minutes apparently, and then we're being called back. So I'm going to ask you if you have any questions about this this way of engaging your families, about the work that you can do as councils. Okay, so remember, oh, sorry, go on.
I'm just new to our council last year, which wasn't very active, unfortunately. But I'm wondering, in terms of, but are there budget restrictions in in terms of the budget that we are allotted and what we can use it for, like in terms of these kind of engagement activities versus other in-school activities or?
Okay, so that's a good question. On budget line 41,500, so write that down, everybody. Budget line 41,500, that's your principal's budget line. There are two allotments of cash. One is $1.25 per student in your school, a minimum of $300, a maximum of $1,000. Right? So if you have over 1,000 kids in your school, you're only going to get $1,000. Okay, but if you have 100 kids in your school, you're going to get 300. That's from the TDSB, and that is meant for operations to keep school council operating. When we're doing it online, we don't have to pay for caretaking, child minding. We don't have to pay for the pizzas, Jess, that you mentioned. We can save that money. So put it into the work that you're doing. You also have $500 from the ministry, and that is meant for parent outreach. But that's anything to do with engaging your families. So you're sitting there with between $800 and $1,500. And you can do a lot of work with that money. I also want to say to you that I've been working with a couple councils this year, and they've asked me, oh, where can we find a speaker for such and such a thing? Start with the school board. All right. If you want to do a session, if you hear from your families that they don't know how to support their kids with numeracy, for example, start with your teachers. Are there teachers who could do a session for say your primary kids on numeracy? Or is there someone in the a math consultant specialist at the board that you could bring in? That's free. And they know how they want things taught in the TDSB. So why not use them? All right. And there's wellness. I mean, any topic you could conceive of, there's some specialist at the board or even in your school, or maybe even within your parent community that could do it. All right. So think about that. And anything that you've done so far is wonderful. All I'm asking you to do is think, how could we massage this so that it's either building relations, or it's linked to learning, or it's building the capabilities of our families to support learning at home, or all three, or two of those things. Just move that way. And for those of you who are having trouble to get your families involved, I think once they find that you're doing for them, that you'll find they come out more. We have to finish now, don't we, Margaret? Thank you very much for joining me, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Come on back.